Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and today I'm talking with Sara MacSorely, who's the director of what we used to think of as the Green Street Arts Center, but is now called the Green Street Teaching and Learning Center. So the GSTLC.
Right. So thank you, Anna. It's great to be here. And Green Street, a lot of our visitors just know us as Green Street, right? And when it started 10 years ago, we were really focused on the arts. But over the past several years, we've been doing a lot more in math and science as well. So we wanted a name that really better represented the work we were doing in all those fields. So we thought Teaching and Learning Center was a little bit more appropriate. And it certainly has a great acronym too, right? So the TLC, to show that it's also a caring place for that we care about education, we care about our community, and that's something that we thought was very fitting for our work as well.
It's perfect. I would never have put that together because I was insisting on all 5 letters.
Right. Green Street TLC.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. So how long have you been there?
I've been there for a little over 2 years now.
Oh, that's amazing.
It feels like a lot longer some days, which is a good thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
And what kinds of things have you done in the last 2 years that you think, stand out in your mind as triumphs?
So when I started was when they were combined the Green Street Arts Center with what was called the Program to Increase Mastery of Mathematics and Science. And these are both Wesleyan programs. And so PIMS, the math program, was historically doing professional development for teachers. And the Arts Center had been doing a lot of youth programming. So they thought that by combining the two, we could do art, math, and science both for kids and for educators. So that was the combination when I started. I oversaw both. And so we've gotten to really sort of push some of the professional development for math for the teachers, which is one of the big programs that's started since I got here. That's thanks to a state math and science partnership award that we've gotten from the State Department of Education. And it's for Middletown and Meriden teachers on this partnership. And we've trained 30 already in the program, are filling our cohort for this coming summer as well.
So I want to hear more about that, but we should probably anchor the Green Street TLC in time and place. So it's been around for 10 years, but it's in Middletown.
It is in Middletown. And it was a building where right off of Main Street, on Green Street, in the north end of Middletown. And we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary there this year, which is great. So, and it's just a few blocks away from Wesleyan. Like I said, we are a Wesleyan program, but we're also community-based. So a lot of our programming that we're doing to serve the kids and the teachers, we also try to involve a lot of Wesleyan students and Wesleyan faculty as well. And over the past 2 years, and before that as well, from what I've heard before my time, we've also had an increasing number of Middlesex students who come and do things at Green Street as well.
Good to hear.
Which is great.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful community outreach activity of Wesleyan. Right. To have this, what used to be a former elementary school, maybe?
It was a parochial school first. It was St. Sebastian's. And so then I think it had a couple other offices in it after that, but they renovated the entire building to become the Art Center in 2005.
And I have to say, if anybody has never been in that building, you probably would be willing to take them around.
For sure.
It's astounding. There's a dance studio.
They renovated it as an art center, so we have 2 dance spaces. We have a really state-of-the-art recording studio. We have music suites with lots of pianos and all of that stuff too. But what's great about the space is a lot of the classrooms are really flexible too. So you don't have to use them as a music suite. You can use it for all types of other classes or teacher workshops or things like that. A lot of different community groups have their meetings there as well.
So when we come back after the break, let's talk about what you mean by teacher training, like what actually happens in teacher training and why we would do it in the first place.
Sounds good.
So we'll be right back after this message. Well, we're back, and this is Middlesex Moments radio show, and Sara MacSorely has joined me today. She's with the Green Street TLC Teaching and Learning Center, which is a project really of Wesleyan University, but a partner to many different groups in the community. So you do a lot. There's so much we'll never be able to cover it all in one show. But I thought we would start with the teacher workshops because there's so much concern from the community college side about students graduating from high school and not being prepared to do college-level math. So tell me that you figured out a way to get into the middle of that.
Well, we hope so, right? That's our goal. So the program that we're doing with the Middletown and Meriden teachers right now through this state grant, we're calling it the PIMS Math Institute. It's really focused on making sure the K through 8 teachers who are teaching this new Common Core standards to our kids really understand the math concepts themselves. So it's a really intensive math content course for the teachers, and it's been developed by Intel, and it's co-taught by a mathematician as well as a math education specialist. So you have the person who knows about the content itself and then the person who knows about how to teach the content. So I think that's a really unique piece of the program and why the state likes the curriculum. So we go through an intensive 80-hour math class with these teachers, and it focuses on all the topics from addition all the way through to functions and really about how they're interconnected. Because at least in, I think it was Meriden, the teachers have to know their curriculum for their grade level and a grade above and a grade below, which is great. Yeah, but then sometimes they'll get questions from students who are more advanced or less advanced that maybe are outside of that range. So by understanding more of the connections, they're better able to answer questions that the kids may have. And it's also by doing a lot of modeling in the course from the instructors, they learn a lot of ways to interact with kids who may learn differently. And one of the unique things we did as being part of Green Street, we actually involved some of our teaching artists who took the math class along with the classroom teachers. So what they've done now is use that deeper math understanding to develop arts integration in the math classroom workshops that then they can do for teachers. So how can you use movement? How can you use visual arts? And then for the summer, we have a musician who's going to be taking it with us.
That's perfect. Music and math
Right.
are wonderful soulmates.
Right.
But give me an example of arts integration. What does that mean?
Arts integration, it's, so it's trying not to think of art and science or art and math as two totally separate things that never interact, right? So how do you sort of use those tools as things that complement each other? Because really when you think about the core of those things, it's about creativity and how you solve problems and how you think. So, for example, we've had our movement workshop already. So not just dance, but movement in general. How can you use movement as a tool in your math classroom? So some of that may be just having activities where the students can get up and move within the regular class just to kind of wake them up again, because for all of us after you sit for so long, just to kind of really bring your brain back on.
I was thinking about 80 hours of mathematics.
Right,
Yeah,
movement can do that. And then the other part of it is really thinking about how you can use your body to express certain math concepts. So like there are ways that, you can move your arms like the arms on a clock, or we had the teachers split up into small groups and develop their own lessons based on learning about movement as a tool, and some of them did it about learning about place value. So, you have your hundreds place, your tens place, and your ones place. And by having 3 people present that, sort of making it more of a visual for students who may learn more visually than hearing it from their teachers.
Mm-hmm. And the teachers like it?
The teachers loved it.
Yeah.
The content course themselves, it was very intense, but by the end of it, they all were talking about how wonderful it was. We got fantastic feedback. Our preliminary evaluation also shows that everyone showed an increase in their math content and their understanding, which is the major goal for it. And then for the movement workshop, it was great feedback too. And the biggest thing for teachers is there's so much on their plate already. We want to be offering a service that makes it really easy for them. And more than, probably about half a dozen of them came to me and were like, I can use this in my classroom tomorrow, which was perfect. That was, we want something that's really useful, and that's something they can use right away without a whole lot of extra thought on their plates. Once they learn it, they can use it right away.
So this is a curriculum that was created by Intel, which is a
Yes.
corporation. So why is Intel doing that?
It's like a lot of the tech industries, they care a lot about the STEM workforce, right? So science, technology, engineering, and math. And I feel like sometimes the M tends to be a little forgotten in those fields. You hear a lot about science and engineering, but not so much as math. And math is really the foundation for all of those fields. So Intel realized that many years ago. This curriculum that they had was created prior to Common Core. And then just recently they've explicitly aligned it with Common Core. But it was just something that they saw as a need for our education system.
Do you think, as you're talking to the teachers, do they have confidence that they're going to be able to, make a huge gain in student learning through Common Core? I mean, are you hearing optimism about that?
I think it's all about how it's implemented. So I think by having programs like this, the rigor and the standard is good. The ways to look at things in a more practical way is good. A lot of the math practices, that there's 8 of them, it's all about, thinking strategically, using the correct tools, being precise, being accurate. Those are all useful skills for a variety of fields. So I think that's good. I think sometimes it's not really clear how the teachers are supposed to make that happen in the classroom, which is why programs like this are really helpful, because it helps them not just understand the content, but then with some of our follow-up, sort of, okay, these are ways that I can bring it directly to my students.
So I want to make sure that we talk about a couple of other things that you're doing with teachers. So I saw something on your website about higher
order thinking schools. The hot schools.
Yes. So, tell me about that.
So Hot Schools is a program that's been around in Connecticut for over 20 years. And they focus on 3 major principles: strong arts, arts integration, and democratic practice. And we've been a partner with them for the last 4 years. We help run the grant to pay for all their programming. And it's worked out really well for us because we have a lot of interactions with their teaching artists. They do a lot of professional development, not just for their artists, but also for the teachers in their schools, a lot of involvement with the parents. It's really a school culture reform program. By really focusing on the arts, how can that improve your entire school community? And I think they have 13 or 14 schools in the state right now.
And at what level? High school? Grade school?
It's mostly elementary school, but they also have a few middle schools, and I think they just got their first high school last year.
So how did they find you, or how did you find them? You don't know?
Well, it's one of those things that it was already happening when I arrived here.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they really wanted to do was find an arts organization that they could partner with for something that could be connected more with the community and more with, I think, working with Wesleyan was something that was attractive too, because we have such a strong arts program to kind of see what the synergies and connections could be there.
And honestly, the facility is fantastic. So then I assume they come to your facility.
So they do for some things. I mean, their schools and their events are all over the state. So for some logistical reasons, sometimes it's better to be elsewhere, but whenever it works out, they have programming in our building, and they have it's sort of outside of them, but it started with a bunch of their artists. There's a teaching artist collaborative that meets every other month at Green Street too.
And these are school teachers who teach art? Or
not necessarily.
So they could be artists in residence?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the term teaching artist, we use it a lot, not just for Hot Schools, but for Green Street as well. So it's sort of our roster of professional artists who are called on to teach our classes or when we need a certain expertise.
Okay, so this is like, you do so many things that I'm sorry to do this, but in an elevator speech, what would you say you do? Because you also have direct programs for children.
We do, and our largest program is really our after-school program that we do at Green Street. But sort of, the elevator speech would really be that Green Street, we really care about teaching and learning, for whether it's for children, for educators, or for the college students, and sort of bringing all those things together and thinking about how art, math, and science can interact and really work together versus being separate things. And we do it in a lot of ways.
And are there people at Wesleyan doing research on what you do and writing about it? Or how do you get the information out to the rest of the world about what you do?
Most of it that we're doing now is more sort of local media. Wesleyan Communications covers a lot of stories for us. And then we have some pretty good relationships with, the Middletown Press, and we have a blog, and our social media presence has picked up quite a bit in the past 2 years, which is great. And I think part of that is just being in a place like Middletown that has so many people who are interested in arts and interested in education, and sort of having a captive audience to talk to.
It really is perfect, isn't
right.
it? Yeah.
Right.
Well, so let's segue to the children's programs, the
okay.
after-school program. So how do students even get to you? Do they?
Right. So our after-school program is for grades 1 through 8, but our primary focus is really elementary school. We have the most class offerings for them, and we have a partnership with the public schools in Middletown where they'll bus all the kids from all the schools directly to Green Street. So parents just have to worry about picking them up at the end of the day. And then we have a selection of classes every semester that's always a little bit different, but includes everything from breakdancing to kids in the kitchen. We have a Picasso and math class this semester, so really diverse class choices for the kids. And it's open to surrounding school districts as well, but for the logistics, we usually end up with primarily Middletown residents. And the students come directly for us. They have a snack. They have whatever class that they picked out at the beginning of the semester. The semesters usually are between 12 and 14 weeks long. And then we also have a homework session that they can choose to take on Monday through Thursday. And that works out really well. And then for the middle school students, one of our most unique classes we call Wesleyan Bound, and that one is run by 2 Wesleyan students who take the middle school children to campus once a week for different activities, whether it's meeting with professors or doing workshops with student groups or student housing, touring the art galleries, touring the science labs, really seeing what college is all about.
What a great opportunity for them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so well, sadly, we have to take another break because this time goes by way too fast. So when we come back, I've got some other questions I want to ask you.
Great.
Well, for the last piece of this radio program, I thought I would ask Sara to tell us how she ended up in this line of work and, you know, what you did in college and why this is a perfect job for you. So,
So I'm really happy with where I am, but I never would have thought that I would have ended up here. So in college, I studied marine biology. My plan since I was 8 years old was I was going to be a research scientist for marine bio. And I went to the University of Rhode Island to study that and had my first research project my junior year and realized I really didn't like research.
oh, really? What was the project?
Well, it was about nudibranchs. So I did a study abroad in Bermuda, and
That would be a great place to
it was
do
a
study
wonderful
abroad.
place to
Yeah.
do a study abroad. And it was one of those projects where everything that could have went wrong. And sometimes that's what science is, and that's what you learn from. But I also noticed that a lot of my friends who were there doing their projects just seemed a lot more excited about it than I was. And I didn't want to go into a career where it wasn't going to be something that really hit me as a passion. So, and it's, I'm halfway through my junior year and I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do now? And luckily I had some really great mentors who were like, well, what about science outreach and science education? So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds great. Because I really liked the science, I just didn't like the research aspect of it. That really wasn't for me. So I got involved with a few programs at the university. The Office of Marine Programs was a big one. Sort of learning about, they had a couple programs that were outreach to teachers, a lot of outreach to the community, and ended up getting my first job at the Rhode Island EPSCoR office, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. And it's basically a program that works to advance marine science and education in Rhode Island, which was a great learning experience for me. And throughout that whole process, I realized I kind of liked the business aspect of it and the administration aspect of a program like that, in addition to the outreach. So I went back to school to get my MBA part-time while I was working. And part of that was because I got a tuition waiver and I would have felt silly not taking advantage of it for a master's. So I knew I wanted to do something that was more, how do I get into a director type position, because I kind of enjoy this piece. And then my partner got a job here at Middlesex Community College, so we were looking to relocate to Connecticut from Rhode Island. And I looked at a couple different education type roles, and when the one at Wesleyan came up, it was interesting because it was combining this science program with this art program. And I wouldn't call myself an artist by trade, but I'm a jewelry maker. I've always sort of really appreciated that creative side. I thought this looked really interesting, and we had started to explore that a little bit at my job in Rhode Island, sort of, how can science and art work together? And I had done a lot with science communication and writing, and so it just seemed like it would be a good fit, and it worked out, and it was.
So what did you learn in your MBA program that you use in your current work?
Well, there's a lot of it. How do you do a spreadsheet to track your budgets correctly is, the finance piece is always important. I think some of my favorite classes for the MBA were more the organizational behavior piece. So how do you manage people, the human piece of it, right? So how do you motivate people? How do you inspire people? How do you, set up the structures to make everyone successful? Those are the things I liked more than the number crunching piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I get to use a lot now, not just with overseeing a staff, but because we do work with so many different audiences and populations, you really get to see sort of what works for each group, and you really get to interact with a lot of different people, which is great.
In the last 2 years that you've been there, have you done have you initiated something new that has your stamp on it that really speaks to your value system and your goals?
So, the Math Institute has started since I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
That means a lot to me for starting, because it's the first formal program that integrates art and math together. And we had talked about that before, but this is sort of the first time the state recognized it as a good idea. So that in itself was important to me. And then just sort of the rebranding as the Teaching and Learning Center was under me as well. And that's something that I think puts us in a really good position.
Do you have a board of directors?
We have an advisory group that we're actually just bringing back together, because PIMS had one and the Green Street had one, and it just would have been a little too big to combine the two. So it took us some time to figure out, what kind of representation we really wanted and what would be most useful for us. And we're actually meeting at the beginning of next month to kind of bring the group back together.
So all of these things draw on what you learned in that MBA program.
Yeah.
But where are you with oceans and fish? I mean, what happened to that piece?
So the oceans, I still love my oceans and my fish, but it's just more of an appreciation at this point. I'm still in touch with a lot of the folks who do that type of work. And so whenever I can talk to people about it, I like talking to people about it, but it's not a super strong area for me right now work-wise.
I wonder if you could explain what nutribranchs are, but
Nudibranch. So it's
so spell it first of all. Let's start there.
Nudibranch, I think. So it's a mollusk. The highest mollusk is like an octopus, right? But then you also have bivalves or mollusks as well, so oysters and things like that. And so it's basically a snail without a shell that lives underwater.
And what were you looking to find out about these
I was doing
little
a feeding
creatures?
experiment on them. So one of the things that's really neat about them, they have these really incredibly bright colors, many of them, because they're tropical. And a lot of times in the animal world, if something has bright colors, it means I might be poisonous, don't eat me. And so with this particular species I was working with, it's bright purple and bright yellow. And what they do is they can take in the toxins from the sponges that they eat, and they don't affect them, but they can put them into their skin cells. So if animal tries to eat them, then they get the poison of the sponge. So I was sort of trying to see how much that happened, and how much of the intake from the sponge that they had. And it just didn't really work at all for me. But that was what we know happens, and I was trying to figure it out. But it was also a pretty preliminary research project with people who had never done it before, so trying to expose people to how does research really work.
The natural world is so remarkable. I think that monarch butterflies do that with milkweed. They feed on milkweed. I think it makes them poisonous to predators.
I think you might be right.
Right. And and I've often wondered, since my first excruciating experience in Connecticut with my dog was him getting sprayed by a skunk.
Oh no.
What happened in the evolution of that animal that really their number one way to protect themselves is to excrete this smell that is nothing like you smell when you're driving a car down the highway. When it's on your dog's head, it smells like your house is on fire.
It's very different, right?
Yeah.
And that's why science is so cool. And I think, one of the other things that we just piloted last summer with a few Wesleyan professors was a Girls in Science summer camp, with the idea of just exposing some of these young women to the science that's around them every day. And with the overall goal of saying, science is also a career for everyone. Because a lot of times, and with math as well, sort of the science fields, you hear about this disparity of there aren't as many women or people of color in these careers. So anything that we can do to kind of help push that and really expose the kids to it, because it's not just about getting them excited, but also to say, this could be a job for you as well. And so that was a pretty cool project.
It is cool. And they're going to grow up in a world that is just unimaginable to me. I'm completely entranced by the idea of recruiting people to go to Mars, the one-way trip to Mars. And this would be the organizational behavior piece, too, how you would select people not only for their skills. I assume you need medical people and engineers and carpenters and all that, but genders and mix and the pop. It's like a brand new Noah's Ark.
Yeah, very big project.
Yeah. But very cool, and it would be wonderful to encourage people who, maybe whatever, don't have firsthand exposure to people who work in the sciences to think about the possibilities. And also to be able to overcome the obstacles, because those things are, difficult. They're challenging, they're rigorous, they're exact. Mathematics is either right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that was with the math piece, that's something that a lot of the research is on too, that especially with women, that sometimes math confidence can be an issue, where it's not necessarily that men are better than women at math, but sort of what society does is make women think they're worse at math, even though they're not. So there's and we all deal with that growing up, right? So the idea, part of what's built into this math course that we're doing is to boost that math confidence. And it was neat to see, because we had some teachers coming into the program that were really uncomfortable with math content. And then we had one in particular who was a 5th grade math teacher who was like, well, I'm really good at math, and I don't know if I'm going to get anything out of this program. So we had the whole range of confidence levels. And then all of them were like, this was fantastic. I learned so much, including the one who was like, I know a lot about math. But especially with many of the women who were in the program, to sort of see those testimonials of, my confidence is much better. I'm going to be more comfortable teaching these things. Those things are really important too.
And I think ultimately they get translated to the students who are around them, right?
Right, because a lot of it is, you have your own biases that you don't necessarily even realize that you're portraying. There's been some of those studies where, you'll get a resume and around a group of people, and it'll be the same exact resume, but one will have a man's name and one will have a woman's name, and you'll get different responses even though they say the exact same thing. And it's just one of those things where we can all be a little bit more aware of kind of our own bias and how it reflects onto other people that we work with.
We have a lot of work to do in all kinds of areas. Well, listen, sadly, my favorite adverb, we are coming close to the end of the program, so I want to make sure that you talk about how people would reach you. So I know you can Google you.
You could Google. Our website's pretty easy to remember. It's www.wesleyan.edu/Green Street. And we're located, like I said, right downtown off Green Street. You can always come to visit. And our number, too, is 860-685-7871 if you'd want to call to find out more about our programming.
And will you have summer programs for youth as well? Or is that mostly teachers?
It's mostly for teachers over the summer because that's when they have their time off. And we're hoping to run the Girls in Science Camp again. We're just waiting on some funding.
Okay, so if anybody is interested in any of that, they should reach out to Sara MacSorely.
Give us a call.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining me
today.
You're
welcome. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Middlesex Moments Radio Show. I'm Anna Wasasha, president of Middlesex Community College, and you can find us on the World Wide Web at mxcc.edu. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll look forward to talking with you again next week.